Hello, beautiful soul. I'm Aurora, and welcome to Twin Flame Journey, a space where we explore the deeper meaning behind soul connections, divine timing, and the path that leads two hearts back to union. If you've been feeling the signs, you're in the right place.
I used to think love awakened people through closeness, through touch, through conversation, through consistency, through being held in someone's presence long enough to finally feel safe. And sometimes it does. But I have seen something stranger happen in these connections. Sometimes her presence does not awaken him. Her absence does. Not because she stopped loving him. Not because she became cold. Not because silence is a game. But because when she was present, he still had somewhere to hide. He could hide inside her effort, her explanations, her patience, her emotional labor, her willingness to understand him before he understood himself. But when she is gone, there is no one left to carry the connection for him. No one softening his silence. No one translating his fear into potential. No one reaching across the distance he created. No one proving, again and again, that the bond was real. And that is when it starts. The quiet. The discomfort. The chest pressure he cannot explain. The memory of her voice when she was tired of asking for clarity. The strange ache of realizing her absence is not empty. It is full of everything he avoided. So why does her absence awaken him more than her presence? Because her presence gave him comfort. Her absence gives him consequence. Her presence showed him love. Her absence shows him what love cost her. Her presence let him receive. Her absence forces him to reflect. And sometimes the divine masculine does not awaken when the feminine is still offering herself. He awakens when he feels the space where she used to overextend. That is the uncomfortable part. The part nobody wants to admit. Sometimes a man does not understand the sacredness of her presence until he has to live without the emotional field she carried. And when that happens, the absence becomes louder than her words ever were. Chapter 1. Her presence gave him something to react to. Her absence gives him something to face. I used to believe that if a woman loved deeply enough, stayed soft enough, explained clearly enough, and held space long enough, the man would eventually understand. I do not believe that in the same way anymore. I have watched women explain their hearts with trembling voices. I have watched them stay gentle when they were hurt. I have watched them soften their truth so it would not overwhelm him. I have watched them love from a place so sincere it almost became self-abandonment. And still, he did not awaken. Not then. Not while she was still there trying to reach him. Sometimes her presence gave him something to react to. Her questions. Her tears. Her need for clarity. Her emotional honesty. Her desire to know where she stood. He could focus on the way she asked instead of what she was asking. He could focus on her intensity instead of his inconsistency. He could say she was emotional, sensitive, complicated, too much. That gave him distance from himself. As long as she was reaching, he could keep reacting. But absence changes the entire dynamic. When she stops reaching, there is no longer a visible emotional movement to blame. No new message. No repeated explanation. No voice asking for reassurance. No late-night paragraph trying to make sense of what he refused to name. Just silence. Her silence. And his. Except now, his silence does not feel powerful. It feels exposed. That is the first reason her absence awakens him more than her presence. Presence allowed him to stay in reaction. Absence forces him into reflection. When she was present, he could say, "She is pressuring me." When she is absent, the question becomes, "Why do I still feel pressure?" When she was present, he could say, "She wants too much." When she is absent, he begins to ask, "Why did basic emotional honesty feel like too much to me?" When she was present, he could say, "I need peace." When she is absent, he has to ask, "Then why does this peace feel so empty?" These questions do not arrive all at once. They come slowly, in ordinary places, at a red light, in the kitchen at night, when he sees her name somewhere, when he opens his phone and realizes there is nothing to check, when the silence he once wanted starts feeling like a room he cannot leave. This is not romantic fantasy. It is emotional consequence. A person can only project for so long when the other person is no longer standing there to receive the projection. Her absence removes the target. Now the feeling has nowhere to go but inward. And inward is dangerous for a man who has survived by looking away from his own emotional patterns. He may not like what he sees. He may see his avoidance. The way he delayed. The way he let her carry the uncomfortable truth. The way he hid behind confusion when he was actually afraid of responsibility. This is where awakening begins. Not because she is punishing him. Because she is no longer interrupting his lesson by absorbing the emotional impact for him. That is hard to say. But it is real. Sometimes love becomes clearest when the person who overfunctioned finally stops. And for the first time, he is left alone with the weight of his own absence. Lesson of this chapter. Her presence gave him something to react to, but her absence gives him something to face. When she stops reaching, he can no longer blame her emotions for the discomfort he still feels inside. And once the discomfort has nowhere else to go, it begins turning into self-recognition. Chapter 2. Her absence reveals how much she was carrying. I have seen women disappear emotionally before they ever leave physically. Not because they stopped caring. Because they got tired. There is a kind of tired that does not look loud. It does not slam doors. It does not make dramatic speeches. It just stops explaining. Her face changes. Her voice becomes calmer. Her eyes no longer search his face for reassurance. She stops trying to pull the truth out of someone who keeps hiding from it. And the strange thing is, he may not notice the full weight of it until she is gone. While she was present, he may have underestimated how much she carried. The emotional thread. The hope. The repair attempts. The softening after conflict. The way she made his silence feel less cruel by giving it meaning. The way she interpreted his distance as fear, not rejection. The way she kept believing in the man beneath the behavior. That is labor. Invisible labor. Spiritual people may call it holding space. But sometimes, let us be honest, it becomes carrying too much. She carried the conversation he avoided. She carried the emotional clarity he would not bring. She carried the connection through seasons where he only gave fragments. She carried the possibility of his awakening while he stayed protected behind the mask. And when she finally stops, the weight does not disappear. It transfers. Back to him. That is why her absence awakens him. He begins to feel the field without her holding it. And it is heavier than he expected. He may realize the connection was not keeping itself alive. It was alive because she kept feeding it. Her softness. Her patience. Her willingness to try one more time. Her ability to sense depth underneath distance. When that energy is withdrawn, he feels the emptiness. Not ordinary emptiness. The emptiness of something once carried by someone else. This can create a strange ache. He may not have words for it. He may just feel that the space is different. Her silence is different now. Her absence has weight now. Her energy is not waiting at the same door. He may sense that she is not just quiet. She is gone from the old pattern. That is what shakes him. Not only losing her. Losing the version of her who kept making his avoidance survivable. There is an uncomfortable truth here. Sometimes a man can remain passive because a woman's emotional labor keeps the bond warm enough for him to not feel the full coldness of his own distance. Her presence cushions the impact. Her absence removes the cushion. Now his silence feels like silence. His distance feels like distance. His lack of clarity feels like lack of clarity. No spiritual explanation softens it. No feminine overgiving turns it into depth. It stands there plainly. And he has to look at it. This can awaken regret. He may remember the way she asked for something simple, and he made it complicated. He may remember the moments she was not trying to control him, but trying to feel emotionally safe. He may remember how much grace she gave him before her peace became more important than his potential. That realization can hurt. A lot. Because he begins to understand that she was not endlessly available. She was enduring. And there is a difference. Lesson of this chapter. Her absence reveals how much she was carrying. When she stops holding the emotional field, he finally feels the weight of what she once softened, explained, and kept alive. And once he feels the weight she used to carry, regret starts entering the room. Chapter 3. He feels the cost of taking her softness for granted. I have noticed that people rarely understand softness while it is available. They understand it when it becomes protected. That is one of the saddest parts of these connections. The divine masculine may have received her softness as if it would always be there. Not necessarily because he was cruel. Sometimes because wounded people do not understand the cost of what they are receiving until it stops. She was warm, patient, forgiving, emotionally perceptive. She could feel the truth underneath his silence and still respond with compassion. He may have grown used to that. Used to her understanding. Used to her coming back. Used to the way she would soften after being hurt. Used to the fact that even when he was unclear, she could still feel his heart and make room for it. But softness has limits. A soft woman can become tired. A loving woman can become quiet. A deeply spiritual woman can still reach a point where her body says, "No more." And when that happens, he feels the absence differently. Not as punishment, as consequence. He begins to realize that what felt available was actually sacred. Her tenderness was not weakness. Her patience was not permission. Her willingness to see the good in him was not an invitation to remain unconscious. And this realization can hit him in the body. A heaviness. A sinking feeling. The kind that arrives when he remembers something small. The way she once waited for his response. The way her face changed when he gave vague answers. The way she tried to stay calm when her nervous system was clearly hurting. The way she said, "I just need honesty," and he still could not meet it. At the time, he may have heard pressure. Now he hears pain. That shift is awakening. He starts reinterpreting the past. Not in a way that makes him hate himself, but in a way that makes him more honest. What he called intensity may have been her heart asking for safety. What he called neediness may have been the natural response to inconsistency. What he called emotional pressure may have been the consequence of his emotional absence. This is where he begins to feel the cost of taking softness for granted. Softness that is not protected eventually withdraws. Not because it stops loving, because it learns. And when he feels that withdrawal, he may finally understand what presence could not teach him. She was not infinite. Her love was deep. But it was not bottomless in the way his avoidance may have assumed. There is a grief in that. A grief that says, "I should have honored this when it was here." That is not ordinary missing. That is remorse beginning to mature. And if he has enough courage, remorse can become responsibility. He may start asking, how did my silence affect her softness? How did my distance change the way she loved? What did she have to become because I could not meet her honestly? Those questions are painful, but they are important. A man does not truly awaken only when he misses a woman. He awakens when he begins to understand what his behavior did to her softness. That is deeper. That is no longer about his loss. It is about her experience. Lesson of this chapter. Her absence makes him feel the cost of taking her softness for granted. He begins to see that her patience, tenderness, and understanding were sacred gifts, not endless resources. And once he understands what his avoidance did to her softness, he cannot remember the connection the same way. Chapter 4. Her absence removes the comfort of being chased. I want to say this carefully. Being chased can make an avoidant man feel safe without requiring him to be brave. That is not always conscious. He may not think, "I want her to chase me so I can stay passive." But emotionally, the pattern can work that way. If she reaches, he knows she cares. If she explains, he does not have to. If she keeps the connection alive, he can stay undecided. If she keeps trying, he can delay the moment where he must bring his own truth. Her pursuit becomes a kind of emotional reassurance, even if he acts overwhelmed by it. This is the contradiction. He may say he feels pressured by her chasing, but part of him may also depend on it. Depend on knowing she is still there, still invested, still hoping. still available, still holding the emotional door open while he stands outside, deciding whether he is ready to enter. Then one day she stops. Not as a tactic, as survival. She stops initiating, stops explaining, stops making herself emotionally available to ambiguity, stops proving the connection to someone who keeps acting uncertain. And suddenly, the comfort of being chased is gone. That is one of the reasons her absence awakens him more than her presence. Her presence may have allowed him to stay passive. Her absence forces him to notice his passivity. There is no movement toward him now. So if anything is going to move, it has to come from him. That can be terrifying. The divine masculine may feel the pressure of his own agency for the first time. Do I care enough to move? Do I have the courage to speak? Was I only comfortable because she kept reaching? What happens if I have to be the one who brings truth? These questions can activate fear, because being chased lets him avoid rejection. If she is always reaching, he does not have to risk being the vulnerable one. He does not have to send the message. He does not have to confess. He does not have to stand in the open and say, "This matters to me." But when her absence creates space, the risk returns to him. Now he has to choose. And choice reveals maturity. He may feel the urge to test the waters. A small message. A casual check-in. Something vague enough to protect him if she does not respond warmly. But if her absence has truly awakened him, he may realize that testing the waters is the old pattern. It is not truth. It is fear trying to regain access without full vulnerability. This is where masculine awakening becomes practical. Can he come forward clearly? Can he respect that she may not be where he left her? Can he approach without expecting her to soothe his discomfort? Can he move toward her without needing her to pull him first? That is a different kind of masculinity. Not chasing. Not begging. Not ego. Presence. The kind of presence that says, "I am willing to risk honesty because this matters." Her absence creates the possibility for that. Her chasing could not. Because as long as she carried the movement, he could avoid discovering whether he had any movement of his own. Lesson of this chapter. Her absence removes the comfort of being chased. Without her pursuit, he must face his own passivity and decide whether he has the courage to move from truth. And once he can no longer rely on her reaching, he begins to feel the silence he created. Chapter 5. The silence becomes a mirror of his own emotional absence. I have always found it painful when someone finally has to sit inside the silence they once gave another person. Not because they deserve punishment, because sometimes silence is the only teacher left. When she was present, she may have filled the silence. With questions. With love. With explanations. With attempts to understand. With emotional bridges he did not help build. But in her absence, the silence changes. It is no longer something he gives. It is something he receives. And that is different. He begins to feel what it is like to wonder, to not know, to sit with the absence of warmth, to notice that no one is reaching to soften the space. This can be deeply uncomfortable. He may not call it pain. He may call it restlessness. He may call it missing her. He may call it being off. But somewhere inside, the silence starts reflecting his own emotional absence back to him. He may remember how many times she sat in uncertainty because he would not speak. How many times she had to interpret the space between them. How many times she tried to feel safe inside a connection where he kept removing his presence without explanation. Now he feels a version of it. Again, not as punishment, as awakening. The silence says, "This is what absence feels like. This is what unfinished communication does. This is what happens when one person leaves the other emotionally alone." That can create empathy. Real empathy. Not the intellectual kind. The body kind. The kind where he finally understands something because he feels the shape of it in himself. He may think, "Is this how she felt? Did I make her feel this kind of waiting? Did my silence create this much noise in her body? Did I call it space while she experienced it as abandonment?" These are difficult questions. They can make him feel shame. But if he does not collapse into shame, they can become a doorway into responsibility. This is the moment where he starts seeing silence differently. Before, silence was his protection. Now, silence has emotional consequences. Before, silence helped him avoid saying the wrong thing. Now, he realizes silence itself may have been the wound. Before, silence made him feel safe. Now, he sees it made her feel unsafe. That is awakening. Not spiritual fireworks. A painful increase in awareness. He may not know what to do with it yet. He may still hesitate, still fear reaching out, still struggle to express what is happening inside him. But the innocence of silence is gone. He can no longer pretend silence is neutral. And that matters. A man begins to change when he understands that what protects him can wound someone else. That is where emotional adulthood begins. Not in perfection. In impact awareness. Lesson of this chapter. Her absence makes silence a mirror. He begins to feel, in his own body, the emotional weight of uncertainty, distance, and unfinished communication. And once silence teaches him impact, his old excuses start sounding less convincing. Chapter 6. He can no longer believe the story that she was too much. I have heard the phrase too much used against women who were simply asking not to be abandoned emotionally. Too emotional. Too intense. Too sensitive. Too demanding. Too spiritual. Too deep. Sometimes, yes, people can overwhelm each other. That is real. Emotional intensity can become dysregulated. Needs can come out messy. No one in these connections is perfect. But there is another side. Sometimes she was called too much because he had too little capacity. Too little capacity for honesty. Too little capacity for emotional presence. Too little capacity for being seen. Too little capacity for repair. Her absence begins to reveal this. When she is no longer there asking, explaining, reaching, or expressing pain, and he still feels unsettled, the old story starts to crack. If she was the problem, why does the problem remain? If her emotions were the issue, why does her silence still affect him? If she was too much, why does life without her feel strangely less alive? These questions weaken the narrative. He may begin to realize that what he labeled as too much was often a mirror of what he had not learned to hold. Her desire for clarity was not too much. His fear of clarity made it feel that way. Her emotional honesty was not too much. His discomfort with vulnerability made it feel that way. Her need for consistency was not too much. His inconsistency made that need louder. This is uncomfortable. It means he may have misunderstood her through the lens of his own defense. He may have turned her pain into a flaw, so he did not have to face his contribution to it. That is a dark but necessary realization. Because once he sees it, the story changes. He stops asking, "Why was she so intense?" and starts asking, "What did my absence create in her?" He stops asking, "Why did she need so much reassurance?" and starts asking, "What kind of uncertainty was I giving her?" He stops asking, "Why could she not just be calm?" and starts asking, "Was her nervous system reacting to my emotional unavailability?" This is not about blaming him for everything. It is about bringing reality back into the room. Relationships are systems. One person's avoidance can intensify another person's anxiety. One person's silence can make another person's need for clarity feel urgent. One person's emotional distance can turn a soft request into a desperate plea over time. When he begins to see that, he becomes more humble. Maybe she was not too much. Maybe she was trying to be loved inside a dynamic that kept making her feel unsafe. That sentence can break something open in him. A man who truly awakens does not keep using her pain as evidence against her. He starts seeing her pain as information. Information about the connection. Information about his impact. Information about what love needed and did not receive. Her absence gives him the space to see that more clearly. And now the old label does not fit. Too much becomes hurt. Needy becomes uncertain. Intense becomes emotionally honest. Difficult becomes trying to be safe. This re-seeing is part of masculine awakening. He begins to understand her humanity, not just his fear. Lesson of this chapter. Her absence helps him question the story that she was too much. Without her presence to blame, he may finally see how his distance, silence, and inconsistency shaped her emotional reactions. And once he sees her pain differently, he begins to see himself differently too. Chapter 7. He starts missing the woman she was before she had to protect herself. I have seen men miss a version of a woman they helped change. That sentence hurts. But it is true. Sometimes, after her absence settles in, the divine masculine begins remembering the woman she was before she had to become guarded. Before she stopped explaining. Before she stopped waiting in the same way. Before her warmth developed boundaries. Before her eyes became calmer but less available. Before she learned to love herself more than she needed him to understand her. He remembers her softness. But now it feels different. Not just desirable. Sacred. He may remember how open she was in the beginning, how she laughed more easily, how she trusted the connection, how she could speak from her heart without measuring every word, how her energy moved toward him without fear. Then he remembers the later version. Quieter. More careful. Less willing to chase. Still loving perhaps, but no longer unprotected. That contrast can hurt him deeply, because he may realize his avoidance participated in that change. Not fully. She has her own wounds, her own choices, her own growth. But he may see that his inconsistency taught her to be cautious. His silence taught her not to rely on his words. His distance taught her to return to herself. His emotional absence helped awaken her boundaries. This realization is both painful and beautiful. Painful because he misses the openness he did not know how to honor. Beautiful because he may begin to respect the strength it took for her to change. This is where masculine awakening starts becoming less self-centered. He does not only miss how she made him feel. He begins to wonder what the connection made her feel. What did it cost her to love me? How many times did she silence her own needs to keep the peace? How much did she grieve before I even noticed she was gone? What version of herself did she have to become to survive my unreadiness? These questions create emotional maturity. They move him from nostalgia into responsibility. A less awakened man may miss the old version of her and resent the new one. He may say, "You changed." He may call her cold. He may feel offended that she no longer responds the way she used to. But an awakening man sees the deeper truth. She changed because something had to protect what he did not protect. Her boundary is not cruelty. It is evidence. Evidence that softness can survive, but not without wisdom. Evidence that love can remain, but not at the cost of self-abandonment. Evidence that she has learned something he can no longer ignore. This may make him feel too late. Not necessarily too late for connection, but too late to receive her innocence. Too late to meet the version of her that believed so easily. Too late to act like his silence had no consequence. That ache can become a teacher. It tells him, honor softness while it is open. Do not wait until it becomes guarded to recognize its value. Do not confuse patience with permanence. Do not mistake love for unlimited access. That is one of the deepest lessons her absence can give him. Lesson of this chapter. He starts missing the woman she was before she had to protect herself. Her absence makes him see that her guardedness may be the result of what she learned through his inconsistency. And once he realizes her boundaries tell a story, he has to decide whether he will respect them or resent them. Chapter 8. Her absence forces him to meet his own longing without her soothing it. I have always thought longing becomes more honest when no one is there to soothe it. When she was present, he may have felt longing and immediately received some kind of relief. A message. A look. A conversation. The reassurance that she still cared. Even if things were uncertain, her energy may have softened the ache. But in her absence, longing has no immediate place to land. He has to feel it. Without her answering. Without her explaining. Without her warmth arriving on demand. Without the comfort of knowing she is still waiting in the same emotional place. This is difficult for the divine masculine, especially if he has not learned how to sit with emotional need. Need can feel humiliating to a man who has built identity around self-sufficiency. He may not want to admit, I miss her. I want to know if she still thinks of me. I want access to her warmth. I want to feel seen by her again. I want the softness I was afraid to receive when it was available. So he may disguise longing as curiosity. Just checking. Just wondering. Just remembering. But the body knows. The body feels the ache. The pull. The absence of emotional nourishment. And because she is not there to soothe it, he has to confront the hunger underneath. The hunger to be loved. The hunger to be known. The hunger to be emotionally held. The hunger to stop performing and still be accepted. Her absence awakens him because it makes him feel his own need. Not her need. His. That is a major shift. While she was present, he may have focused on what she needed from him. Clarity, consistency, reassurance, presence. That may have felt like pressure. But now, in her absence, he discovers need inside himself. And that can humble him. He may realize he judged her longing while hiding his own. He may realize he called her attachment intense because he was terrified of his own attachment. He may realize he acted independent while secretly depending on her emotional availability. This is uncomfortable. But it is honest. Her absence removes the illusion that he needs nothing. He may still function, still work, still live, still appear fine. But something in him knows that being functional is not the same as being fulfilled. He may miss the emotional intimacy, the feeling of being seen, the way she sensed his moods, the quiet comfort of her presence. And this longing, if he lets it mature, can teach him. It can teach him that need is not weakness. Need is human. The problem was never that he needed love. The problem was that he did not know how to need without disappearing, controlling, or pretending he did not need at all. That is where awakening begins. When he can admit longing without making it someone else's burden. When he can feel need without using it to manipulate, test, or regain access. When he can let longing become honesty. Not panic. Not possession. Honesty. I miss her, and I need to understand what that is asking me to become. That is an awakened question. Lesson of this chapter. Her absence forces him to meet his own longing without her soothing it. He begins to recognize his need for connection, softness, and emotional intimacy instead of hiding behind false independence. And once he can admit his own longing, he begins to understand hers. Chapter 9. He finally understands presence is a gift, not a guarantee. I have seen people grieve someone's presence only after they realize it was never guaranteed. A text that used to come. A voice that used to soften. A woman who used to care out loud. A heart that used to keep trying. Then one day it is not there. And the emptiness teaches what comfort could not. For the divine masculine, her absence may awaken the realization that presence is a gift. Not a guarantee. Not something he can delay, ignore, mishandle, and expect to remain unchanged. This is where he may begin to understand love differently. Not as something available whenever he becomes ready. Not as something that waits unchanged while he works through fear. Not as something that can be paused indefinitely without consequence. Love is alive. It responds. It learns. It protects itself. Her presence was not an object on a shelf. It was a living offering. Every time she showed up, she was choosing to show up. Every time she softened, she was choosing to soften. Every time she tried again, she was choosing hope over exhaustion. And choices can change. That is what he may finally feel. The impermanence of access. A man can become very awake when he realizes the door that once opened easily now requires truth. Not because she is punishing him. Because trust changed. Because her body remembers. Because her softness has learned discernment. Because presence, once taken for granted, does not return in the same unconscious way. This realization may make him feel grief, urgency, humility. He may want to reach out. But if he is truly awakening, the question changes. It is not only, can I get her back? It becomes, can I honor her presence if I receive it again? That is a very different question. It is less egoic, less panicked, more mature. He he may begin to understand that her presence was not just pleasant. It was nourishing. It gave the connection warmth. It gave his guarded heart a place to soften. It gave his hidden self a mirror. It gave him emotional access to parts of himself he rarely touched alone. And now that presence is gone, he feels the sacredness of it. This can awaken devotion. Or entitlement. The difference matters. Entitlement says, "Why is she not there anymore?" Devotion says, "I understand why she had to leave the old pattern." Entitlement says, "She changed." Devotion says, "She protected herself." Entitlement says, "I miss what she gave me." Devotion says, "I want to become someone who can honor what she gave." That is the fork in the road. Her absence does not automatically make him awakened. It gives him the opportunity to awaken. What he does with the realization matters. Will he blame her for having limits? Or respect the sacredness of those limits? Will he chase the comfort he lost? Or become responsible enough to meet the woman who now requires truth? This is the emotional test. And it is where masculine awakening begins to become visible through behavior. Not feeling. Behavior. Lesson of this chapter. Her absence teaches him that presence is a gift, not a guarantee. He begins to realize that love must be honored while it is available, not only mourned after it becomes protected. And once he understands presence is sacred, he must decide what kind of man will approach it now. Chapter 10. Her absence awakens him, but his awakening must become action. I want to end with the part that matters most. Her absence may awaken him. But awakening is not proven by what he feels in the silence. It is proven by what he chooses after the silence teaches him. That is the final truth. He may miss her. He may feel her. He may finally understand what he took for granted. He may replay memories with new eyes. He may realize she was not too much. He may feel regret for the way he made her carry the connection. He may understand that her presence was sacred. All of that may be real. But feeling is not yet transformation. A man can be awakened emotionally and still remain avoidant behaviorally. He can know the truth and still not speak it. He can regret the past and still repeat it. He can miss her softness and still be unprepared to protect it. So the question is not only, did her absence awaken him? The deeper question is, what does he do with the awakening? Does he become more honest? Does he communicate with clarity? Does he respect her boundaries? Does he stop expecting her to carry the emotional labor? Does he approach her as a whole woman with her own healing, or only as the source of comfort he lost? That is where the awakening becomes real. Or not. This is important for the divine feminine to hear. His awakening is not your assignment. His missing you is not your responsibility. His regret is not your burden to soothe. His realization does not require you to abandon the woman you became while healing. You can have compassion. You can honor the bond. You can feel that something has shifted. But you do not have to rush back into the old pattern, just because his absence finally taught him what your presence tried to show him. Let him bring action. Let him bring truth. Let him bring consistency. Let him bring a version of himself that is not only emotionally affected, but emotionally responsible. And if he does not, let your absence continue to protect your peace. That is not cruelty. It is wisdom. Because the goal is not to be the woman whose absence finally woke him up. The goal is to be the woman who no longer abandons herself to keep someone else from sleeping. That sentence matters. You are not here to disappear so he learns your value. You are here to return to yourself because your value was never dependent on his awakening. If his awakening brings him to truth, let truth show itself. If his awakening brings him to presence, let presence be consistent. If his awakening brings him back, let him meet the woman who now knows her worth. Not the old version who over-explained. Not the anxious version who chased. Not the wounded version who accepted hidden feelings as enough. The woman who understands that love must be felt and lived. Energy and behavior. Soul and body. Longing and responsibility. Her absence awakens him more than her presence because it removes the comfort, the cushion, the chase, the emotional labor, and the illusion that love will wait unchanged forever. But his awakening must become action. Otherwise, it remains only another private realization, another silent regret, another emotional truth that never becomes love in the real world. And you deserve love in the real world. Not only in his thoughts, not only in his dreams, not only in the silence where he finally feels what you once offered. You deserve presence. The kind that speaks. The kind that stays honest. The kind that respects your nervous system. The kind that does not need your absence to remember your value. So let this be the final message. If her absence awakens him, let it awaken him fully. Into truth. Into accountability. Into emotional courage. Into the man who no longer needs to lose softness before he learns how to honor it. And if it does not awaken him into action, let it awaken you deeper into yourself. If this message touched something in you, write in the comments. My absence protects my peace. Like this video if it gave you clarity. Subscribe for more spiritual psychology, divine masculine, divine feminine, soul connection, separation, and emotional awakening insights. And share this with someone who needs to remember. Sometimes her absence awakens him, but her self-respect saves her. Lesson of this chapter. Her absence may awaken him, but real awakening must become action. Missing her, regretting her, or feeling the bond is not enough unless he becomes honest, accountable, consistent, and emotionally present.
Thank you for spending this moment with me. If this message resonated with your soul, remember to subscribe and continue this journey with us here on Twin Flame Journey. And always remember, what is meant for your soul will always find its way back to you. Until next time, beautiful soul, trust the journey.